I never thought I'd be that person sharing family drama online, but here we are. Grab your Starbucks and settle in, because this one's a wild ride. When my grandfather passed away last year, I was heartbroken. He was my rock, the one who'd pick me up from soccer practice in his beat-up Ford F-150 and take me for ice cream at Dairy Queen no matter what the weather was like. He taught me how to fish, how to change a tire, and most importantly, how to stand up for myself. That last lesson, turns out I'd need it way sooner than I expected. So Papa, that's what I called him, had this gorgeous estate in the suburbs of Chicago. Not like mansion level, but definitely the kind of place that makes your friends go, dang, when they drive up. Old money vibes, you know? When he passed, everyone was devastated. Well, almost everyone. My stepsister Cassie showed up to the funeral in designer shades, texting through the entire service. We've never really gotten along since my mom married her dad when I was 12. But come on, have some respect. A month after the funeral, the lawyer called us in for the reading of the will. Papa had left me $175,000. I was completely floored. As a 25-year-old elementary school teacher making basically nothing, this was life-changing money. I immediately started thinking about paying off my student loans, maybe putting a down payment on a small condo instead of sharing that cramped apartment with 2 other teachers and a cat that isn't even mine. But then my mom pulled me aside in the parking lot. "Natalie, honey," she said, clutching my arm with that look she gets when she's about to ask for something major. "Cassie is in trouble. She needs surgery, and her insurance won't cover it all. Now let me tell you about Cassie. She's 28, has never held a job for more than 3 months, and somehow always has the latest iPhone. But health is health, right? No one should suffer because they can't afford medical care." "What kind of surgery?" I asked. Mom looked uncomfortable. "I can't say exactly. It's private. But it's serious, and it's $150,000 that they want up front." Something felt off, but this was my mom asking. The same woman who worked double shifts to buy me my first pair of Nike sneakers because all the other kids had them. The woman who drove me to every debate tournament and sat in the front row beaming. How could I say no? So I agreed. The lawyer transferred most of my inheritance to Cassie, leaving me with $25,000. Still helpful, but not life-changing. Cassie hugged me awkwardly and whispered, "Thanks, sis," in my ear. It was literally the nicest she'd ever been to me. Fast forward 1 week. 1 freaking week. I'm scrolling through Instagram after putting my 4th graders' art projects up on the bulletin board when I see it. Cassie, lounging on a private beach in Bali. Caption: "Sometimes you just need to treat yourself." 5-star. Best life. Blessed. My blood went cold. I kept scrolling through her feed. There she was, getting a $500 massage at some fancy resort spa, drinking champagne on a yacht. Shopping bags from Gucci and Prada lined up on her hotel bed. The surgery money, my inheritance. She was blowing it all on a luxury vacation. I screenshot everything and drove straight to my mom's house, practically breaking the speed limit in my 2012 Hyundai that makes a concerning noise whenever I go over 65 millimeters. I burst through the door, phone in hand. "Mom, look at this!" I thrust my phone at her. "Cassie lied about needing surgery. She's in Bali spending my inheritance on designer bags and champagne." Mom took one glance at the phone and handed it back to me. "Natalie, don't be ridiculous. She had the procedure and the doctor recommended a relaxing recovery period. She's earned this break after what she's been through." I just stared at her. "A recovery period? In Bali? With shopping sprees?" "You've always been jealous of Cassie," Mom said, shaking her head. "Those pictures are probably old, or you're manipulating this situation to make her look bad." Then she walked away. End of discussion. I sat in my car afterward, crying so hard. I couldn't drive for 20 minutes. Papa had wanted me to have that money. He knew how hard I worked, how much I struggled. And now it was gone, being wasted by someone who didn't even bother to show him respect at his funeral. But something Papa used to say kept echoing in my head. The loudest person in the room rarely has the winning hand. He was big into poker. Metaphors. So instead of causing a scene or trying to convince my mom, I decided to look more closely at Papa's will. Maybe there was something I missed, and oh boy, was there ever updated. So there I was, sitting in my car feeling like I'd been punched in the stomach, when I remembered something else Papa used to say. When you're dealt a bad hand, don't throw in your cards. Look harder at the rules of the game. The next morning, I called in sick to school. Sorry, Mrs. Rodriguez. Grabbed a Dunkin' iced coffee with enough espresso shots to wake the dead, and headed to the lawyer's office. Mr. Finch was surprised to see me without an appointment, but agreed to meet me during his lunch break. "I'd like to review my grandfather's will again," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "The complete version." Mr. Finch raised an eyebrow. "The complete version? Ms. Campbell, we went through the entire document during the reading. Did we, though? I asked. Papa was meticulous about everything. The way he organized his tool shed, how he labeled his fishing tackle boxes. Something told me he wouldn't leave things so unfinished. Mr. Finch hesitated, then pulled out a thick folder. Well, there were some additional minor assets that didn't seem necessary to discuss during the initial reading, as they're of relatively little value compared to the main estate. 4 hours later, I walked out of that office with my hands shaking. So bad I could barely unlock my car. Mr. Finch had been wrong. So wrong. In addition to the cash inheritance, Papa had left me a small lakeside cabin in Wisconsin, and his entire collection of antique watches and clocks. The cabin needed work, sure. It hadn't been used in years. But the collection? Apparently, my grandfather had been quietly amassing vintage Rolexes, Patek Philippe's, and other timepieces that collectors would give their right arm for. The collection was conservatively valued at around $350,000. But here's the kicker. There was a specific clause attached to these additional assets. They were mine if and only if I demonstrated honor and integrity in handling the primary financial bequest. The clause stated that if I misused the initial inheritance or allowed it to be misappropriated, these secondary assets would be sold and the proceeds donated to the local animal shelter. Papa loved his rescue dogs. Mr. Finch looked uncomfortable. Your grandfather was particular about his values. He sure was, I whispered, a plan already forming in my mind. That weekend, I drove up to Wisconsin to check out the cabin. It was about 2 hours north of Chicago, perched on the edge of a stunning lake with crystal clear water. The place was definitely shabby. Peeling paint, creaky floors, outdated everything. But the structure was sound, and the location was breathtaking. 20 acres of private woodland surrounding a 2-bedroom cabin with a massive stone fireplace and huge windows overlooking the water. Standing on that weathered deck, watching eagles circle over the lake, I felt Papa's presence so strongly I almost turned around expecting to see him. This was why he'd included that clause. He knew my mom might pressure me to give away the money. He was giving me a second chance. I called my best friend Jordan, who happens to be a contractor, and begged her to come see the place. She drove up the next day, took one look around, and whistled. Nat, this place could be amazing with some TLC, she said, already measuring things in her head. And in this market, lakefront property is gold. Over the next 2 months, I spent every weekend at the cabin. Jordan helped me prioritize repairs, showing me how to do a lot of the work myself to save money. I used part of my remaining $25,000 for materials and specialized labor we couldn't handle. My hands were constantly covered in paint and splinters, but weirdly, I'd never felt better. Each nail I hammered felt like a tiny act of justice. Meanwhile, I had a meeting with a watch appraiser who specialized in vintage timepieces. He nearly had a heart attack when I opened Papa's collection. This is museum quality, he kept saying, handling each piece with reverent gloves. Your grandfather had an exceptional eye. I decided to sell just 2 of the watches, enough to finish the cabin renovations properly and create a financial cushion. The rest I kept secured in a bank vault. Papa had lovingly collected them over decades. I wouldn't rush to dismantle that legacy. By early summer, the transformation was complete. The cabin had gone from forgotten relic to rustic chic retreat. We'd kept the charm, the original hardwood floors, the hand-carved stair railings, while modernizing the kitchen, bathrooms, and adding reliable heating and cooling systems. You could easily Airbnb this place for $300, $400 a night during the summer season, Jordan said, as we clinked our Coors Lights on the newly refinished deck, more during fall colors and winter holidays. That night, scrolling through my phone, I saw that Cassie was back from Bali and already planning her next adventure, a Mediterranean cruise. Mom had posted pictures of them shopping together at Nordstrom for cruise essentials. I didn't feel the same gut punch as before. Instead, I typed up a quick listing for the cabin on a vacation rental site, added some photos, and hit publish. Within 24 hours, I had bookings for most of the summer. By late July, the cabin was generating more monthly income than my teaching job. I hired a local couple to handle the cleaning and check-ins, so I didn't have to drive up constantly. Each time I got a notification of a new booking, I smiled, thinking about Papa. He'd given me something better than cash. He'd given me an opportunity to build something sustainable. Around Labor Day, my phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Natalie, we need to talk. Cassie's medical bills have increased and she needs another procedure. I know you have some inheritance left. I stared at the message for a long time, thinking about the photos I'd seen of Cassie parasailing in Santorini last week. I typed back. Sorry. Mom, I've invested what was left. It's not accessible. She called immediately. I let it go to voicemail. When school started back up in September, I returned to my classroom with renewed energy. Teaching had always been my passion, But now I wasn't. Constantly stressed about money. I could afford decent groceries instead of ramen. I could take my students on field trips and cover the costs for kids whose families couldn't pay. In October, I received a voice message from Mr. Finch. Ms. Campbell, I thought you should know your mother came by asking about any additional assets from your grandfather's estate. I explained that there was nothing else to discuss per the terms of the will, but I believe she may be under the impression that there might be more to uncover. Please call me if you'd like to discuss further. I didn't call him back. There was nothing to discuss. 2 weeks later, Mom showed up at my apartment unannounced. Cassie was with her. We need to talk about your grandfather's estate, Mom said, pushing past me into my living room. The lawyer is being difficult, but we know there must be more. What makes you think that? I asked, leaning against the wall, heart pounding but voice steady. Your grandfather was wealthy, Cassie said, looking around my apartment with thinly veiled contempt. That money couldn't have been everything. And suddenly you can afford a new TV and actually decent furniture? She gestured to my modest but much improved living room. I took a deep breath. I've been managing my money carefully, that's all. I also picked up some tutoring gigs. Natalie, this is family, Mom said, using her guilt-trip voice. If there's more inheritance, we should discuss how to share it fairly. Cassie's medical issues. What medical issues exactly? I interrupted, looking directly at Cassie for the first time. What procedure did you have? What diagnosis? Which doctor? Which hospital? Cassie's face flushed. That's private medical information, she snapped. I don't have to share that with you. No, you don't, I agreed. Just like I don't have to share my financial information with you. I'm your mother, Mom said, her voice rising. After everything I've done for you? You mean like believing me? Supporting me? Protecting what Papa wanted me to have? The room went silent. Mom looked like I'd slapped her. You know what? I said, suddenly exhausted. I have parent-teacher conferences tomorrow and a stack of math tests to grade. I need you both to leave. This isn't over, Cassie hissed as they walked out. She was right about that. But she had no idea what was coming next. Final update. So here's how it all played out. 2 days after Mom and Cassie's ambush visit, I received a formal letter from a lawyer, not Mr. Finch, but someone from a flashy downtown firm. They were investigating irregularities in my grandfather's estate distribution and requested an immediate meeting to avoid unfortunate legal consequences. Classic Cassie move. When manipulation fails, try intimidation. Instead of panicking, I forwarded the letter to Mr. Finch, who called me laughing so hard he could barely speak. Ms. Campbell, please don't worry about this nonsense. The will is ironclad. A week later, during our school's fall festival, Mom and Cassie showed up unexpectedly. They cornered me by the apple bobbing station, Mom looking uncomfortable, Cassie triumphant. We know about the cabin and the watches, Cassie whispered, smirking. Your little secret's out. I nodded slowly. They were never a secret. They just weren't yours. We're family, Mom insisted, eyes pleading. Your grandfather would have wanted us to share. That's when I pulled out the copy of Papa's will that I'd been carrying in my bag just in case. I handed it to Mom, the special clause highlighted, in yellow. Papa knew exactly what he was doing, I said quietly. He left instructions that these additional assets would only go to me if I showed honor and integrity with the initial inheritance. The inheritance I gave to Cassie for her emergency surgery that somehow turned into a Bali vacation. Mom's face went pale as she read the clause. Cassie tried to grab the paper, but Mom held it away. You should go, I told them as my 4th grade students started gathering for their pumpkin decorating session. This is a place for people who tell the truth. They left without another word. That was 3 months ago. Yesterday, Mom texted asking if we could talk, just the two of us. I'm considering it. Not because I want anything from her, but because Papa also taught me that while you should never let people walk all over you, sometimes the strongest people are the ones who leave the door cracked open for reconciliation. As for me, the Lakeside Retreat now has bookings through next summer. I'm still teaching, but I'm also taking classes to get my real estate license. Turns out I really enjoy property management. Sometimes when I'm at the cabin, sitting on the deck with coffee, watching the sunrise, I swear I can hear Papa chuckling. In the end, he gave me something worth far more than money. He reminded me of who I am and what I'm capable of, and that, my friends, is truly priceless. Smiley face.